The nature of true contentment, personal happiness, and shared joy. In the ancient gardens of Kyoto, master cultivators discovered that true peace emerges not from controlling conditions, but from finding harmony within whatever season arrives, creating contentment that enhances rather than competes with care for others. Having recognized love as the underground wellspring feeding all authentic contentment, you now discover the remarkable nature of what emerges from that source. Like the difference between a shallow stream that runs dry during difficult seasons and a deep aquifer that provides steady water year-round, contentment draws from sources that remain accessible regardless of surface conditions. In the ancient gardens of Kyoto, master cultivators discovered something profound about the relationship between effort and satisfaction that challenges contemporary assumptions about happiness pursuit. These gardeners learned that the deepest fulfillment emerged not from creating perfect aesthetic displays or achieving recognition for horticultural mastery, but from the quiet satisfaction of tending growth itself, regardless of seasonal outcomes or visitor appreciation. The master gardener experiences a quality of engagement that remains stable, whether spring brings abundant blooms or drought limits flowering, whether visitors appreciate the garden's beauty or pass by without notice, whether this season's efforts succeed spectacularly or require patient adjustment and replanting. This stability represents something fundamentally different from the excitement of successful harvests or the disappointment of failed plantings. This distinction reveals the difference between happiness as emotional weather that changes with circumstances and contentment as the stable inner climate that supports well-being regardless of external conditions. Like the gardener whose satisfaction comes from the process of cultivation rather than specific outcomes, authentic contentment emerges through engagement with life itself rather than depending on particular results or external validation. Yet contemporary culture often conflates these qualitatively different experiences, treating contentment as sustained happiness rather than recognizing it as the foundation from which genuine happiness can emerge naturally, without becoming the primary life focus or creating dependency on circumstances beyond individual control. Understanding this distinction transforms approaches to well-being from endless pursuit of positive experiences toward cultivation of the inner stability that enables both appropriate response to difficulties and natural appreciation of life's genuine pleasures without requiring constant pleasure provision for basic life satisfaction. This chapter explores contentment not as emotional state to be achieved, but as natural condition that emerges when internal and external life align with authentic human needs for meaning, connection, growth, and contribution that transcend temporary circumstances while providing foundation for sustainable satisfaction throughout life's inevitable variations. Hedonic versus eudaimonic well-being, the contentment distinction. Contemporary psychology distinguishes between two fundamentally different approaches to human flourishing that require different cultivation methods while producing qualitatively different types of life satisfaction, each serving important but distinct functions in overall well-being and authentic development. Hedonic well-being focuses on pleasure maximization and pain avoidance through positive emotional experiences, enjoyable activities, and favorable circumstances that create temporary happiness states which, while valuable, require constant renewal through continued pleasure provision and circumstance management to maintain satisfaction levels. Eudaimonic well-being emphasizes meaning, personal growth, relationships, and contribution to purposes larger than individual pleasure, creating stable life satisfaction that supports rather than depends on positive emotional states while remaining accessible during difficult periods when hedonic approaches fail to provide adequate support. This distinction matters profoundly for sustainable contentment because approaches that prioritize hedonic well-being often create cycles of temporary satisfaction, followed by renewed seeking when pleasure fades, while eudaimonic approaches build cumulative life satisfaction that becomes more stable and accessible over time rather than requiring constant maintenance through external input. Research by psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan demonstrates that people who prioritize eudaimonic goals, including personal growth, meaningful relationships, and social contribution, report higher life satisfaction, better mental health, and greater resilience during challenging periods compared to those focused primarily on hedonic goals like wealth accumulation, fame, or pleasure-seeking. Hedonic adaptation research reveals why pleasure-focused approaches provide diminishing returns over time as psychological systems naturally adjust to positive circumstances, requiring increasingly intense or novel positive experiences to maintain equivalent satisfaction levels while potentially creating dependency on external pleasure provision. The hedonic treadmill describes this pattern where individuals must constantly pursue new positive experiences to maintain happiness levels that naturally decline through adaptation, creating exhausting cycles of seeking and temporary satisfaction that prevent development of the stable inner resources that eudaimonic approaches cultivate systematically. Contentment emerges primarily through eudaimonic pathways, involving alignment between daily activities and core values, engagement with intrinsically meaningful pursuits, development of authentic capabilities and relationships, and contribution to purposes that transcend individual benefit while providing lasting satisfaction independent of external recognition. This alignment creates what psychologists call eudaimonic activity, where engagement itself provides intrinsic reward rather than requiring external outcome achievement, generating natural satisfaction through involvement with activities that serve authentic development and meaningful contribution regardless of specific results or recognition. Yet this emphasis on eudaimonic well-being doesn't require eliminating pleasure or positive experiences, but rather treating them as natural expressions of contentment rather than primary goals requiring constant pursuit. When contentment provides stable foundation, happiness emerges organically through engagement with meaningful activities and relationships without requiring forced pursuit or external dependency. Contentment in action, real-world scenarios and practical applications. Understanding contentment requires seeing how it operates within the complex realities of modern life, including economic pressures, relationship challenges, health difficulties, and social uncertainties that test our capacity for sustainable satisfaction. Career transition. During economic uncertainty. Sarah, a marketing professional facing industry downsizing, demonstrates the difference between happiness-seeking and contentment cultivation through her response process. The happiness-seeking approach would focus on quickly finding equivalent or better employment to restore financial security and professional identity, creating anxiety when job searches don't immediately succeed, and tying well-being to employment outcomes. Sarah's contentment approach involves accepting current uncertainty while engaging skillfully with practical necessities. She maintains daily routines supporting physical and emotional well-being, uses unemployment time for relationship deepening and skill development, approaches job interviews as opportunities to serve potential employers rather than desperate attempts to meet personal needs, and finds satisfaction in competent search efforts regardless of specific outcomes. Practical implementation, morning appreciation for current resources, savings, health, family support, before beginning job search activities. Networking approached as genuine interest in others' professional challenges rather than self-focused resource extraction. Boundaries around job search. Time to preserve energy for relationships and personal development. Meaning-making through volunteer activities that provide purpose during transition. Progress markers. Reduced anxiety about employment timeline, increased creative problem-solving, deeper family relationships during challenging period, and job interviews conducted from confidence rather than desperation. Managing chronic health challenges. David, managing diabetes and related complications, illustrates how contentment operates within health limitations that cannot be completely resolved through medical treatment or lifestyle changes. The happiness-seeking approach focuses on returning to pre-diagnosis activity levels and fighting medical restrictions that limit preferred activities. David's contentment approach involves accepting health realities while maximizing quality of life within current constraints. He develops new forms of physical activity appropriate for his condition, finds meaning through helping other patients navigate similar challenges, maintains social connections through adapted activities, and appreciates health improvements when they occur without demanding complete restoration. Practical implementation. Daily routines supporting optimal blood sugar management while maintaining flexibility for social engagement. Relationships with healthcare providers based on partnership rather than dependency. Pursuits that accommodate rather than fight health limitations. Support group participation. providing meaning through helping others. Progress markers, stable health management, meaningful relationships with other patients and healthcare providers, maintain social connections despite activity modifications, and peace with medical realities without resignation about quality of life. Relationship difficulties without clear resolution. Jennifer, navigating marriage problems while raising teenagers, demonstrates contentment during relationship stress that doesn't have clear resolution timeline. The happiness-seeking approach would either demand immediate relationship repair or pursue separation to eliminate discomfort, potentially missing opportunities for growth and deeper intimacy. Jennifer's contentment approach involves maintaining love as foundation, as explored in Chapter 21, while engaging skillfully with relationship challenges. She practices communication skills from curiosity rather than defensiveness, maintains individual identity within marriage dynamics, finds meaning through family service regardless of partnership difficulties, and creates stability for children during uncertainty. Practical implementation. Weekly relationship meetings focused on problem solving rather than blame. Individual therapy for personal growth alongside couples counseling, family activities that provide positive experiences during partnership stress. Self-care routines. Maintaining individual well-being within relationship challenges. Progress. Markers. Improved communication patterns. Children's emotional security maintained during parental difficulties. Individual growth occurring alongside relationship work, and clarity about relationship direction emerging through patient engagement. The paradox of seeking versus allowing contentment. One of the most counterintuitive aspects of contentment cultivation involves recognizing that direct pursuit of happiness as satisfaction often undermines their natural emergence, while approaches that focus on authentic engagement and meaningful contribution allow contentment to develop organically without forced effort or external dependency. This paradox emerges because contentment represents byproduct of life alignment rather than achievable goal, making it similar to sleep or digestion in requiring indirect cultivation through appropriate conditions rather than direct forcing through willpower or technique application that may interfere with natural processes. The person who tries to fall asleep often finds that sleep becomes more elusive through effort, while creating appropriate conditions including relaxation, comfortable environment, and release of control enables natural sleep emergence. Similarly, contentment emerges through life conditions that support rather than force satisfaction development. Contemporary happiness research confirms this paradox through studies showing that people who prioritize happiness as primary life goal often report lower life satisfaction compared to those focused on meaningful activity, relationships, and contribution, suggesting that happiness serves life engagement rather than functioning effectively as direct pursuit objective. Psychologist Tim Kasser's research demonstrates that materialistic goals pursued primarily for happiness creation actually reduce life satisfaction while increasing anxiety and depression, while intrinsic goals including personal growth, relationships, and community contribution enhance well-being without creating the negative side effects associated with happiness-focused approaches. Practical steps for transitioning from happiness-seeking to conflates and cultivation. Step 1. Assess current motivation patterns. Complete this weekly reflection to identify whether your activities emerge from happiness, seeking, or contentment cultivation. Which daily activities do I pursue primarily for positive emotional outcomes versus intrinsic engagement? When do I feel disappointed because activities don't produce expected happiness versus satisfied through meaningful engagement? How often do I make decisions based on potential pleasure versus alignment with values and purpose? Step 2. Values activity alignment practice. Identify activities that provide intrinsic satisfaction rather than external reward dependency. List activities that engage your attention naturally without requiring external motivation. Notice which pursuits remain satisfying even when external recognition is absent. Develop regular engagement with values-aligned activities regardless of mood or circumstances. Step 3. Meaning source identification. Examine sources of life, meaning including relationships, contributions, personal growth, and value expression that create stable satisfaction, independent of temporary circumstances or emotional states. What aspects of your life provide meaning even during difficult periods? Which contributions or service activities generate intrinsic satisfaction? How do your unique skills and interests serve purposes larger than personal benefit? Step 4, emotional acceptance, training practice. Accepting current emotional states without requiring improvement while maintaining engagement with meaningful activities that support overall well-being regardless of temporary feelings. Notice the difference between emotional experience and life engagement capacity. Practice continuing meaningful activities even when mood states are challenging. Develop comfort with emotional weather while maintaining consistent life participation. Individual contentment and collective well-being. The relationship between personal contentment and community well-being reveals itself as complementary rather than competing dynamic, where individual inner peace contributes to collective harmony, while community support enables individual contentment through interconnected systems that serve both personal and social flourishing simultaneously. This integration challenges cultural assumptions that treat individual happiness and social responsibility as competing priorities, requiring sacrifice of personal satisfaction for community benefit or selfishness that ignores collective needs for individual pleasure pursuit, instead revealing how authentic contentment naturally expresses through generous engagement. Research in social psychology demonstrates that individuals with higher well-being contribute more to community welfare through volunteer activities, social support provision, and civic engagement, while people experiencing chronic dissatisfaction often become more self-focused and less available for community contribution, suggesting mutual reinforcement between individual and collective flourishing. The contagious nature of emotional states means that contentment spreads through social networks, just as anxiety and dissatisfaction influence others' well-being, creating positive or negative cycles where individual emotional patterns contribute to family and community emotional climates that either support or undermine everyone's satisfaction. Studies of emotional contagion reveal that people naturally mirror others' emotional states through unconscious facial expression, imitation, vocal tone matching, and empathetic resonance that creates shared emotional environments where individual contentment contributes to collective well-being while community anxiety affects individual peace. This contagion effect places ethical dimension on contentment cultivation because individual emotional patterns influence others' well-being, particularly within families, where children's emotional regulation development depends significantly on parents' emotional modeling and stability that provides security foundation for healthy development. The parent who cultivates genuine contentment provides children with emotional security and regulation modeling that supports their lifelong capacity for satisfaction and resilience. While parental chronic anxiety or dissatisfaction creates family emotional environments that may undermine children's well-being regardless of material, provision, or educational opportunities. However, this understanding of contentment's social impact must avoid creating additional pressure to feel good for others' benefit, which could undermine authentic contentment through performance anxiety while missing the genuine care for others that naturally emerges from stable inner peace rather than forced emotional management. Authentic contentment enables, rather than requires community contribution by providing stable internal resources that make service feel natural rather than depleting, creating generosity from overflow rather than sacrifice, while maintaining healthy boundaries that protect both individual and collective well-being through sustainable engagement. Shared joy in community applications. Shared joy emerges through community experiences based on mutual contentment rather than entertainment consumption or external stimulation, creating collective satisfaction through shared meaning, collaborative activities, and mutual appreciation that enhances rather than replaces individual contentment through social connection. Community celebrations, collaborative service projects, shared learning experiences, and mutual support during difficulties create opportunities for shared joy that doesn't depend on external entertainment provision while building social bonds that support individual contentment through belonging and mutual care. For communities facing economic challenges, shared joy through mutual support, collaborative problem solving, cultural celebration, and resource sharing provides satisfaction that doesn't require financial resources while building community resilience that supports everyone's well-being through collective strength rather than individual isolation. The neighborhood that organizes community gardens, skill-sharing networks, childcare cooperation, and mutual aid during difficulties creates shared satisfaction while supporting individual family well-being through community resources that provide both practical assistance and social connection. Troubleshooting, common contentment obstacles. Contentment feels selfish when the world has so many problems. Authentic contentment creates capacity for sustained social engagement rather than competing with care for others. When contentment is absent, attempts to help often emerge from guilt or anxiety that can create burnout and less effective assistance. Stable inner peace provides the emotional resources needed for long-term social contribution and appropriate response to world problems. I feel guilty being content when my family members are struggling. Contentment enables you to provide more stable support to struggling family members through emotional regulation modeling and practical assistance from stable foundation. Your contentment doesn't mean ignoring others' difficulties, but responding from inner resources rather than shared anxiety that may increase family stress without providing helpful solutions. Contentment seems impossible during financial stress. Contentment doesn't require financial security, but can be cultivated within economic constraints through meaning-making, relationship appreciation, and contribution opportunities that don't require money. Many contentment practices, including gratitude, service, skill development, and community connection, remain accessible during financial difficulties while providing inner stability that may support more effective economic problem solving. How do I maintain contentment when my life circumstances genuinely need to change? Contentment supports rather than prevents appropriate life changes by providing emotional stability needed for clear decision-making and sustained effort toward improvement. Contentment means accepting current circumstances as starting point rather than permanent condition, enabling skillful action from peace rather than desperate reactivity that may create additional problems. Experiential contentment development exercises. The contentment versus happiness. Recognition practice. For 1 week, maintain a simple log tracking. Happiness moments. When did I feel good because something pleasant happened? Contentment moments. When did I feel satisfied through meaningful engagement regardless of emotional state? Stability assessment. Which experiences provided lasting satisfaction versus temporary pleasure? Progress recognition. Notice how contentment moments remain accessible during ordinary circumstances, while happiness moments require special conditions or events. The eudaimonic activity. Identification. Complete this monthly assessment. Which activities engage my attention naturally without external motivation needed? What contributions or service activities generate intrinsic satisfaction rather than external reward? How do my unique interests and capabilities serve purposes beyond personal benefit? Which relationships provide mutual growth and support rather than entertainment or convenience? Implementation steps. Gradually increase time spent in eudaimonic activities while reducing dependency on hedonic pleasure-seeking for basic life satisfaction. Community contentment. Observation. Spend time in environments where people demonstrate contentment through meaningful engagement. Libraries where people pursue learning for intrinsic interest. Community gardens where people find satisfaction through growth cultivation. Volunteer organizations where people serve from genuine care. Spiritual communities where people practice inner development. Learning objective. Observe how contentment appears different from entertainment, seeking happiness, while noting the quality of presence and engagement that contentment creates. Preparing for the emotional weather ahead. As you deepen understanding of contentment as stable inner climate rather than temporary emotional weather, you prepare for learning to work skillfully with the full spectrum of human emotional experience. In our next chapter, we will discover how true contentment doesn't require constant positive emotions, but rather develops capacity to navigate sadness, grief, and sorrow as natural elements that contribute to, rather than undermine, long-term satisfaction. The distinction you have explored between happiness and contentment becomes essential for the journey ahead, where you will learn that contentment can coexist with difficult emotions just as deep aquifers continue flowing beneath seasonal surface changes. Your love foundation provides the wellspring. Your understanding of contentment's nature provides the stable container. And now you will develop the skills to work with whatever emotional weather arises while maintaining access to the inner peace that supports both personal authenticity and generous engagement with others. True contentment reveals itself not as constant happiness, but as the capacity to remain engaged with life's meaning and purpose throughout the full range of human emotional experience, creating resilience that serves both individual flourishing and collective well-being through all seasons of existence.